Hello, everyone. This is Samir Abu Rumman, Princeton University. I will be talking today about one of the topics that we all the time say it's very important in our public opinion survey and measurement and research field, which is asking question and building the questionnaire. And this is just an example after we all know the basics ideas of how to ask questions and write good questions, and we don't want you to write uh, as the writer of the book The Power of Survey when he says how is it easy to ask the wrong question. So these are examples, and this is one of the stages that we usually do when we wanted to evaluate our questions, such as this is questionnaire that I already had worked on, and I think it's one of the good questionnaires that it's across countries, and I have some notes here just to let you know how we can build our questions and how we review our questions, even if there are a good people, high level scientific. Uh, mm, uh, Academics or practitioners who wrote this, we all the time need to review our questions, review our if there is new practices, if there is new issues, with new codes of ethics. Like for example, some professional organization like WEPUR, World Association for Public Opinion Research, they have codes of ethics, so they just write some new ideas that you could benefit of and develop and improve and evaluate your questions. And also universities have their ways of the review communities. So this is just an example, a questionnaire. Here we need to write an introduction to greet. In the introduction usually have to have a greetings. Who are you? How long is the questionnaire? What's the email? How what's the main goals, what's the privacy, what's the content information. Then here we have some questions, we call it demographic or personal questions. We don't usually start in from the beginning with those questions. I think those are a bad start, but sometimes we usually leave them at the end with all the demographic as we have in this question here, because we call it like hit and run, just ask at the end. But some questions you gotta ask them from the beginning, because they determine your filtering, determine your sampling, the skipping of the questions. So such as those questions about age, about gender, whatever. Here's another also comment that we gotta be careful with the coding. Sometimes if you do the codings, you gotta understand why is the coding and the numbers. Sometimes, or like for example, the refused in the codings, it's 99, for example, in this questionnaire. And also we gotta review the context of the questions. Like for example, here there is a questions about immigration to Kuwait. We in Kuwait, we don't have this kind of immigration. We have like the population diversity or division, but we don't have immigration as it's in the Western or the United States immigration style. So this is a very important issues that we gotta review all the local definitions, and we have to fit them in the yes. This is a very important note, the question number 12, and I also have it in a couple of questions that we gotta understand the scale that we are talking about. So let me jump here to one very quick and easy to see it, which you have in general, each scale have to be exactly balanced to have one in positive, one negative, or two positive, two negative. For example, this here, one of the list, choice number two, it says in the middle, so متوسطة in Arabic. So that is not good to have something in the middle while it's in the upper high or positive. So you gotta be clear, two positive, two negative. So this is one of the suggestions that I have. So this is a very common issue that you gotta be careful when you review questions or when you write questions to have it balanced. Here also another comment that I have, also the meaning here, one of the meanings that it's not does not fit with the local. Also, one of the things that's important to check while you are reviewing the questions is to know that each questions is different and exact and should be different and clear in the respondents, in front of the respondents, between the two items. Here is an example that the gap between rich and poor, and also the gap in income between rich and poor. So that needs to be clarified in a way that respondents will understand that we are talking about. Okay, this is also another issue, not definitions, but also the thing that you're asking about is existing in this country. For example, this country, Kuwait, does not have a political parties as known in political definition. They have trend, they have groups, but not like a group for political parties organized and officially recognized by. And this is also another question that you have to get the scale similar to each other, so you cannot uh, be mistaken in your reports. Here's an important issue that also I have a couple of comments here. You have to have the same the same topic you're asking about. Don't ask two ideas in one spot or one question. You either ask about the month or the topic that you are supporting or you're volunteering. Uh, this is another one. Also, this is a long question and saying that please explain those words in your those definitions in your word. This is a very frustration question for the respondent. So we gotta be careful not to have those kind of questions in front of the respondents, because that might make we that might increase the response rates, as we all the time say, hunting for the last respondent. This is one of the books title, by the way. Another thing here, this is the scale that I already talked about, and here's an example of the translation. It's you got to be accurate when you translate the words other languages. And also, this is a very, very important issue. Like, for example, this one is talking about basic things in humanity. And if you want to close the questions, you gotta you justified why you are just putting in front of the respondent those six answers, those six choices, and you gotta justify it and approve it, either previous studies, either previous surveys that you already knows that those are the six questions for the exam for answer that might be in front of the respondent. But to make a balance, you should, my opinion, we gotta put like others specify, and this is something usual in order to balance between effect the impact when you see a question and you see answers in front of you, that you will have the more possibility to choose those answers. So this is very important issue to put others when you have some close-ended questions. And this is another example that we don't have the word immigrants, like for example in Kuwait, or we have another one that he's like a expat. So we have to change all these in the local languages. And also we have to be clarified in some of the questions, like for example, why you determine that the Western people are responsible for the climate changes and you're not specifying other nationalities like Asian, for example, or wherever. So you gotta justify why is that. And this is something also regarding language. You gotta, I don't like agree, disagree. Just say agree, oppose, or against. That makes it easier for the respondents to answer instead of telling them agree, disagree. So that makes it a little bit, in my opinion. So And I think we have a lot of good examples to use those different words in our questions, in our surveys. Sometimes you can just delete some of the extra words, like, for example, I'm suggesting here, delete this part, and also some of the questions that you got to understand how many choices you are allowed. I know this is something programmatic, and the programmer will put how many choices you have, but sometimes you gotta be you when you evaluate the questions, you gotta ask the one who wrote the questions how many choices you are allowed to answer. Those all are similar to what I talked about, to have a similar choices while you are answering the questions. And this is another meaning issues. I mean, it should be clarified. Are you talking about me, or you're talking about general public? This is something you gotta be clear while you are writing your questions. Here, I'm saying that this question number, like 31, is exactly the same as number 33, and this is 33. And I know there is an old way that you put the same question in the questionnaire so you can figure out the false or the respondent who is not concentrating. I believe this is not, it's an old way, and they have their own justification for this, but we don't, for me, I don't use it anymore. We just try to do a quality assurance and do our control in other than this way, which I respect whatever who does. This is some of the choices here. For example, fees on driver's license in Kuwait for non-Kuwaitis. This is something all the time is there, and for Kuwaitis or non-Kuwaitis to just to pay. But for here, you say that this is a policy that it's been changing. So you got to be careful if this is something there in the country before you ask, because people will get confused what you're asking about. And also some of the are the questions, like, for example, here you're asking about taxes, expenses, asking about uh, different issues that should be clarified while we are talking about. This is same thing about agree and disagree, or oppose or against. And also, this is another thing. See, this is something confusing. As you can see here, all of these are choices, and this is something we're just like facing a new scale in the questionnaire. So we gotta just approve it or justify why we are doing this in this kind of questions, where I think we should not do. So this is a good also good ideas all the time to check, so you can have same scale. You got to be careful for yes no questions and questions that needs information. For example, here it's a yes no questions. Why we asking about, like, we're asking for a year, not just to say yes or no. And also also, this is another example of changing the scale. See how much we have a lot of choices here. This is something we don't have in the other part of the surveys. So we gotta ask. Oh, this is another also comment that no one is getting paid, or it's not usual to get paid in some countries by hour. So you gotta change it to be paid by days or monthly as mostly used. So this is something we gotta consider while we are reviewing our questions. This is just a couple of spelling and language, which we believe that should be important so everyone will understand your question. So this is just an example that we give it to our students who wants just to, after they know the basics, how they review the questionnaire and just give their comments. And at the end, you just say, thank you to the respondent, and thank you also to you, and hope that will be useful in writing a good questionnaire and good questions to get good answers. Thank you.